because we were dependent on handouts, food handouts from the US. But food handouts were actually dressed up conditional diplomacy. They'd send us food, we were called contemptuously ship to mouth. We'd consume the food, but again, Mrs. Gandhi was held to ransom by Lyndon Johnson. She couldn't let out a statement on Vietnam, she couldn't let out a statement on Pakistan. We had to keep our mouths shut. And there were times when we had no grain, there was nothing happening. We were down to our last bags of food, and the Americans would control when that would come in. If she'd made a statement which they didn't like, they would never let her forget it. She was enraged, her knuckles used to go white. And so finally one day, out of great desperation and having to put, with so much going against her from the American, she finally turned to Professor Swaminathan and said, Swami, how soon can you give me 10 million tons of seed? Because I want to get the bloody Americans off my back. Why 10 million tons of seed? Simply because of grain, 10 million tons of grain, simply because that was the amount we'd imported. And she needed, our own surplus to be able to have that, so we could stop this conditional diplomacy. Professor Swaminathan said, give me 2 years, but we need money. We didn't have money then. She rode a very difficult path. She came through, she said, I will support you, but you get me out of this morass of diplomacy that we are facing. She worked very closely with him and the scientists, went very much against her own government, which was very nervous that, if 5 crores rupees, which was a huge amount back in the 1960s, and money which we didn't have, if it didn't work out on the seed shipment, which was 18,000 tons of seed, which was the largest seed shipment in history, you were looking at a colossal political failure. In fact, if that money could have gone to schools and buildings and roads, something which we desperately needed in those times, but she stood her nerve. And the result was the Green Revolution, and there was so much grain spewed out of the grounds that they had to be, you had to, open up cinema halls and schools to store them, because it was, they didn't anticipate it doing so well. Today, with the trade tariffs, and the trade tariffs are quite strange. Why? Because the trade tariffs are such that the Americans will come and say that, you have to look out for our farmers, but Indian lawmakers aren't allowed to look out for theirs. So there's a huge dichotomy over there, and in the fact that American lawmakers are all out to look out for their lot of farmers, but we are not able to do the same. Today, we do need a Mrs. Gandhi and a scientific and, a strong, scientific and a political response from India. We don't want the American president to go to town to say that, the Prime Minister is not going to do anything because he doesn't want to risk upsetting me. The larger risk is upsetting a general populace who are growing impatient.